So I'm sitting here, standing actually, thinking about the past year as I prepare to write my customary year in review for the final book of the year. And I realized that were I to characterize it as an unusual, abnormal year, that might be the fourth or fifth year in a row I've characterized the previous year in that same way. And maybe these unusual, abnormal years, as they apply to the used vehicle market, are in fact not so unusual and abnormal, but are perhaps the new normal. Those of us who've been in the game for a while may be forgiven if we finally recall what we used to consider normal years. Typically, there was a strong spring market that pulled us out of the doldrums of the late fall, early winter depressed market, and would more often than not sustain itself into the late spring, early summer months. It was a welcome breather for all of us, bringing at long last stability to a previously very unstable, unpredictable market phase. I can remember years where I hardly ever lost money on a vehicle during that very forgiving market. Wait long enough and some desperate soul, we call them angels, would need that vehicle that had all the earmarks of a loser and bail you out. And you could afford to wait because just about everything around it got sold and the market was holding steady. That somewhat euphoric phase would typically be followed by a slowly declining summer market as both supply and demand faded and people became absorbed with the joys and/or demands of summer vacations and kids out of school. It was a falling market, but gently enough so that most of us could keep up with it and anticipate its progress and not get into too much trouble. You could still make money and have some fun. Then would come fall. Back to school, back to work, return to routine, new model announcements, introductions, together with leftover sales. Difficult, but at least predictable. Lots of new vehicle sales as buyers were enticed by new offerings. Lots of trades turning into a market more focused on new vehicles than used. What you would expect was a steeply declining market in most segments, and that's what you got. But it was predictable, and you could plan for it. Not a lot of fun and a challenge, but at least you could tread water. That was followed by the final year-end holiday phase between Thanksgiving and the New Year. That, to me, was the one unpredictable period. Some years it could be profitable. Book prices had caught up with the falling market, and in some cases surpassed it. There could be a favorable supply-demand dynamic. Other years, it didn't matter how low the book was, everyone still wanted to buy below it. And it seemed as if there was no demand. Some years I would have been, in retrospect, better off taking a 4 or 5 week vacation. An unpredictable period, but at least only a few weeks in duration, and soon to be followed by our favorite time of year, the spring market. And so it went seemingly year after year. But seemingly no longer. Today almost every year seems to be punctuated by some challenge, some abnormality. We are by now all too familiar with fuel price spikes and the topsy-turvy havoc they bring to various market segments. When RAV4s are worth more than Tahoe LTs, Priuses more than Lincolns. And we've weathered the effects of financial crises, housing market collapses, new and improved credit score requirements, joblessness, stocks crashing, new vehicle sales dropping by several millions seemingly overnight. Enough to make grown men cry. This year, even a tsunami contributed to the instability. What next? Who knows? But that's the point. The kind of stability we used to think of as something like our birthright can no longer be counted on. This year was punctuated by a fuel price spike and the longer-term effects of the Japanese tsunami. With those exceptions, it was a pretty stable year in terms of supply and demand. New vehicle sales remained tepid, and so were trade volumes, and lease terminations and used vehicle supply versus demand was such that the market was relatively predictable. And dealer expectations were probably in line with reality for the most part. I'm guessing that for most of us engaged in the used vehicle game in whatever way, 2011 was a pretty good year relative to the recent past. We hope for the same in 2012, but by now we've learned that only time will tell. Finally, and as always, we are extremely grateful for our many loyal subscribers and partners, and wish all of you a very special holiday season and all the best for the coming year. We look forward to continuing to serve you in the future and are forever mindful of our responsibility to provide you with the best information available in a variety of formats to best suit your needs.